If you're considering doing this and you want to be involved in the trail and ultramarathon community and you're not coming in with the right intentions, quite frankly, fuck off. We don't want you. Well, it has been a minute or two since we last talked. We're already in the midst of planning for 2024. I know a lot of folks probably already have their 2024 planned out, but what you're seeing is a decline in the number of UTMB qualifying races and a decrease in participation, at least from North America, in UTMB races. Following this whole blow up with Gary Robbins and racing in Whistler, to a lot of the trail racing community, maybe this is a new thing that Ironman has entered the picture, and Advance, who owns the Ironman brand, who also then subsequently own UTMB. And I want to talk a little bit today about what Ironman did to triathlon, what it could have done for the community of ultra runners, and then kind of look too at what would it take for a big corporate entity like an Ironman to come into this trail and ultra running space, and potentially the mountain bike and gravel racing scene, because Ironman has started buying up long distance mountain bike races. Ironman actually bought the Cape Epic mountain bike stage race not too long ago, so you're kind of seeing them expand into these other disciplines that frankly we don't want screwed up by some big corporate entity who doesn't really care that deeply about the experience broadly. Not just for athletes, for spectators, for families, for volunteers, for the community at large. There doesn't really seem to be a significant focus there. How could a large corporate entity successfully come in and do that? And I'm not sure that there is a path forward for that. Not sure that we really want that to happen to these races. There could be some huge benefits. Big corporations come with big dollars, and with that means big advantages, but it also means they can majorly overlook small details. They can overlook people, experience, quality in certain areas that a local race company is going to do a far better job providing the experience in those ways, even if they may not have all of the newest, best, brightest, right things in all the places that a large corporation could. I started triathlons in like 2008, 2009, right around 15 years ago, and Ironman was the big stink on that circuit. You were nobody if you hadn't done an Ironman race. And so I set my sights on doing an Ironman race. In the intervening years, of course, we started seeing Ironman buying up races that were well known, that were well established, like Vineman, like there was a couple of races in Michigan, several others in California. They bought all of these races. These were highly respected, well-known, well-established races within the triathlon community that had been running for, in some cases, 30, 40 years. And Ironman was just snatching them up left and right, coming in and buying whatever they could that anybody would sell to them. And what we saw happen over the next 15 years or so is that those races, after Ironman bought them, were shuttered. They just closed them up. They closed up shop. Once Ironman bought that community aspect just went totally out the window. And that has been Ironman's MO with all of these communities that it goes to. It works very closely with economic development commissions, local government agencies, taxing authorities, certain businesses, not all businesses. So you really started to have this us against them mentality when it came to communities versus Ironman. Participation starts dwindling in these headline races that everyone sort of aspired to in the triathlon community. Really started to make me especially question, is it really worth all of the time, energy, money? And eventually the answer to me became no. Because I had spent so much time at the local events where it was, you're no one if you haven't done an Ironman, I sort of attached that mentality to those local races. So I stopped really doing triathlons altogether. So for the last 2 years now, I have done exactly 0 triathlons. These local events are now struggling because Ironman has created this struggle for the entire community. And that has been really challenging for local race directors. And it's shown up in some of the triathlon publications. They're starting to pick up on this trend now, finally. They are finally connecting the dots that because Ironman has started struggling, you're seeing races go away because of lack of participation. Attendance numbers are down, registration numbers are down, races are disappearing and they're not being replaced with other races. The local races are having that same kind of impact, and I don't know how they've missed that to this point, but it's because Ironman has created such a difficult environment for triathletes to want to participate in any kind of racing in that arena. It's trickling down now to the local races, and they're having trouble being solvent and putting on quality events like they used to be able to because of participation numbers. So all of that as history to Ironman. Enter Gary Robbins and a Whistler event that he had put on up in British Columbia. Ironman essentially created an environment where Gary Robbins could not put on that race by the way that Ironman interacted with the local permitting agencies, the hotel in the area, and specifically Vail Resorts, who does not have the greatest reputation in my area in Colorado as an employer, as a partner to organizations that are not skiing, snowboarding, or are not major corporate entities who have this global high-profile draw attraction to them. And I know that sounds kind of silly to the trail running community because we all know who Gary Robbins is. We all recognize that a race produced by Gary Robbins is going to be super high quality. It is going to have a global draw, but I think in the minds of the folks at Vail Resorts, they're not Ironman. So you've got this kind of disparity in visibility and in public perception. Whether that's accurate or not, we can have an honest debate about, but the perception, I think, of people outside of the sport is Ironman, Gary Robbins, easy solution, right? Makes sense to them. What we saw was a massive public backlash toward Ironman, and I think it's well deserved because of their history in triathlon, and now that they're expanding into, we knew they bought UTMB, they own the Rock and Roll Marathon series, and now they've bought the Cape Epic mountain bike stage race, sort of indicating that they are pointing towards endurance sport more broadly. These communities kind of have to make a choice. Is this who we want to be, for better or worse, the pinnacle of the sport, at least in the eyes of the outside world? The trail racing and ultramarathon community said adamantly, loudly, vehemently, no, fuck off, Ironman, we don't want you. To the point now where we're seeing other races withdrawing from the UTMB qualification process, all the things that you would do to earn your stones for UTMB races. And say what you will about, whether that's a smart business decision or not, I think those races are actually going to see increased support because the community at large said, we're not interested in Ironman coming in and buying up these races from smaller race production companies that we know, we respect, who do an excellent job. I think the message was, Ironman, if you want to play in this space, if you want to be UTMB, you're going to have to do it from a grassroots perspective. And that, I think, is where Ironman totally missed the mark and could, going forward, correct themselves here. From what I understand, there was maybe a chance for them to sort of do this, but they've taken a black and white approach to interaction with smaller race production companies. They tried to buy the race from Gary instead of asking Gary how they might be able to partner with their race. And that's the key. That's how I think one of these massive corporations can come into a community like trail and ultramarathon racing and potentially mountain biking and gravel bike racing. I'm not as familiar with those communities, but I get the sense that they're very similar, right? It's very close knit. It's a collection of smaller race production companies, maybe with like one or two big names in the space. And there are a handful of other really, really well-known races that if they wanted to expand, probably could do so. I think there's some manpower and funding issues, familiarity with local permitting agencies, departments of natural resources, etc. That's kind of where they're lacking, but Ironman has those abilities, those capabilities, those connections, the corporate structure to come in and say, great news, we've got this figured out. We've been doing it for decades and decades and decades, and we know how to get this done with not only the local agencies that need to be involved, but the communities, the PR, and combining that expertise with the local company's heart, the soul of those races, could really be a very valuable addition to the community. They really have not taken a community-first approach ever. That's the overarching concern, is that Ironman has not done a good job of focusing on the community of athletes it serves, the people who are 1 degree removed from that community. Think family members, spectators, volunteers. Those people have kind of been forgotten, and instead Ironman really focused in on how do we make the most money for us, and how do we make the most money for the people with whom we have direct contracts, municipalities, the taxing authorities, the various agencies, and maybe a handful of hotels, vendors, etc. When you start to think about who it is you serve as a race production company, those places certainly jump out as maybe the first people that come to mind. They're the obvious answer. But what I think maybe is most important to trail and ultramarathon running is that we care a great deal more about the communities that we go to, the trails that we're on, the wildlife that we're seeing. We have a much broader sense of responsibility, and that has been missed. That doesn't really jive with the spirit of this community. And if I had to guess, it didn't jive with the spirit of the triathlon community. They kind of ran roughshod over that, but there really wasn't another player to talk about in that space. Well, that's not the case with trail and ultra. We have a number of other players that we already talk about, that are already highly respected, that we would rather give our dollars to, particularly in this case, if they dissociate themselves from this player who came in and was frankly just a total asshole about the whole thing from start to finish, and then didn't recover well when everybody kind of said, hey, what the is going on? Ironman came out with this piss poor response that just completely missed the mark. I think it's important that we talk about it. We try and figure out the root causes behind it. We consider, do we want a massive corporate entity to come in? I think the ways in which that could be beneficial, you're going to see permitting get way easier if you have a massive corporate structure behind it, because you have people dedicated directly to that who are paid every single day to be putting these things together year round and working with those agencies, working with the taxing authorities, putting contracts together to make sure that all the concerns of the people who you need to have on your side to get access are met. You think about things like start-finish line experience. You think about things like race timing and tracking, GPS monitoring, connections to sponsors for aid station purposes, right? They have connections to these massive nutrition conglomerates and people who could bring in food and resources to remote areas, because that's an expensive undertaking. And when you have a corporate entity who can put a lot of money and manpower behind that, specifically with their partners in those spaces, I think you could see a lot of success in those aid stations on the top of a mountain where you need a couple of tents and lighting and generators and food and all of this stuff that has to be trucked in en masse. That's really difficult for a smaller race provider to figure out. Ironman could, or a large corporate entity, could be really helpful in that way. And that's really about where it ends. It's those massive financial and logistical undertakings where Ironman could be, and I keep saying Ironman. What I mean is any corporate entity who wants to put on a number of high-profile, high production value races around the country, around the world, who has deep pockets and strong relationships, for them to come in and be a good partner and get their foot in the door without upsetting the community. It just takes some extra thought from those folks. And it's clear that in this case, Ironman did not put in that extra thought. They came in a little bit ham-fisted and really it up, to be honest. That's my 2 cents. I think it could be in the future worth another try from another corporate entity, but there's going to have to be some serious thought in advance. And they're going to have to come in and do a political thing and tour and make sure that people understand why it is that they're there and that their intentions are to build the community up and not plant their flag and declare it their own thing. That will never fly. That is not the way to do this. If you're considering doing this, if you want to be involved in the trail and ultramarathon community and you're not coming in with the right intentions, quite frankly, fuck off. We don't want you. It's not how we do things. And I've only been a member of this community for a short amount of time, but it's clear to me that this community in particular holds its values above anything else. And if you're not going to come in and support those values and you're not going to demonstrate to us how you're going to support those values, don't bother. Don't come, because you're going to get a poor reception. People are going to absolutely despise you. You are not going to see success. It's not going to go well for you. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I hit on anything that resonates with you? So if you got any value out of this, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies. I'm not picky. In the meantime, you know what to do. All the YouTube algorithm things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you know every time I upload a video. Until next time, see ya.